Ladies and gentlemen, dear panelists, dear friends, welcome to the webinar. Today we will be talking about the hands-on workshop on post-mining landscape restoration. My name is Alexey Alexeyenko. I am a doctor of engineering with a focus on post-mining land rehabilitation and transitions. I am the head of the UN laboratory on Resource Nexus. The workshop and the webinar are organized by the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification G20 Global Land Initiative, G20 GLI, the Land Rehabilitation Society of Southern Africa, or simply LaRSSA, and the United Nations University Institute for Integrated Management of Material Fluxes and of Resources, or just UNU-FLORES. Today, we will share the experience of organizing this training workshop, and the webinar will include 4 parts. The 2 most important of them, at least in my perception, will be delivered by the participants who kindly agreed to take part in this session and share their own impressions of the event. And it is also the session for your questions. Plus, we also have the words from the organizers and the lecturers who were involved in the workshop. The event took place in March this year in South Africa. We brought together practitioners, decision makers, scientists, NGO activists, and different stakeholders from 20 countries, mostly of the African continent, but also from Europe and Asia. In total, we had more than 50 speakers and attendees during the full week event. Few words about the format. So, this was the hands-on training workshop. When we at the UNU-FLORES developed the curriculum, the broadest concept of the learning pyramid was applied. And so we aimed at making it as interactive as possible. And with that, we provided the sessions that went beyond the simple lecturing or reading to also group discussions, interactive tasks, and for sure, field tours to the real post-mining land restoration sites. When developing the program and the curriculum, we were inspired by the best global examples of the societies, of the unions and initiatives aimed at facilitating post-mining land restoration, rehabilitation, and sustainable transitions. So we learned from the experience of our good friends in Australia, in America, and also from the working group on soils of urban industrial transport, mining, and military areas, or just SUITMA. And with that, we were able to develop our own unique program that did not repeat the already existing courses. And our unique point is that we apply the Nexus lens. So for each case, we study the interconnectedness of environmental resources available after the mine closure. And we considered all of them as valuable assets and not just as legacies. So with that, several clusters were offered to the participants of our workshop, starting with the general overview of the Nexus thinking and the broader concepts of planetary boundaries and triple planetary crisis, to space, land and soil resources, biological resources, waste and secondary resources, food resources, water resources, energy resources. As you have already seen, we have also provided the attendees with the updates from the recent conferences of parties under the 3 UN conventions that are the conventions on climate change, desertification, and biodiversity. The final 3 clusters looked at the financial resources, at the monitoring techniques, and human resources, including community engagement in post-mining transitions. The main message that we conveyed was that in planning the mine closure and post-mining transitions, a lot is to be done to go further, to go beyond this step under number 0, that is on danger elimination and making sure that the site is safe, stable, and non-polluting. So with the Nexus thinking, the resource cataloging is to be done. Then, after understanding societal demands, the land use guiding becomes possible and truly inclusive. Post-mining landscapes can either become symbols of decay or models of sustainability. And we advocate for the resource nexus that allows the latter. Thank you. And now I would like to invite Mr. Konrad Krüger, who is the president of the Land Rehabilitation Society of Southern Africa, to speak about the workshop and the hands-on experience that we provided during this week. Konrad, over to you.
Thank you very much, Alexi. Can everyone see my screen? Presume so.
Yes, Konrad.
Thank you very much. Firstly, LaRSSA, we are a local association in Southern Africa that focuses on land rehabilitation, restoration, all of the R's. And our main goal is to bring people who are interested in doing work in land rehabilitation together. And this workshop provided us an opportunity to extend that workshop mentality beyond just South Africa and Southern Africa into the rest of Africa and with our colleagues overseas. And when Alexi asked me to give an overview of the workshop, I'm a man of few words, so I decided I'll put together a bit of a video clip to show you in what the workshops and the site visits entail. So please, let's hope this works, and please enjoy it. I will give a bit of comments along the way.
Conrad, there is no sound from the video for us.
Okay. Well, in any case, I'll then narrate if you don't mind. These are all our attendees that were there on the first night. We had our cultural evening. And they all provided us the variety from Europe, Africa, and all the countries that Alexia has mentioned earlier. For this short little clip, we just asked them all to greet in their local language, just to give an idea of how many different cultures and nations were represented on the day. And the initial video that you saw was just a welcoming from all the various dignitaries, and just covered all the different topics on the day. Okay. As you can see, quite a diverse group of people. And then we're going to go into the actual field tours and give you a bit of a taste of what that entailed. Our first visit was to Tungela, one of our local mining houses that was kind enough to invite us to one of the actively coal mine sites that they're busy with restoration and rehabilitation. They are dealing with mine water decant, artisanal mining, general landform and rehabilitation work, as well as the research that they're doing into generating soil where there's no topsoil available. They are looking at generating soil from rock mulching and adding some material to that. And then the second visit was to DRD Gold. There was another company that was kind enough to host us, where they took us to their new mega tailings facility, where they are remining already deposited tailings in an effort to recover the gold that's still within the tailings. This was a new tailings dam that was being built. And then we also visited in some of the existing facilities that has been recovered and is still being recovered. To give you an idea that everyone's working on is a liner system. Then just a general overview of the events. As Alexius already mentioned, there was lectures, there was lots and lots of group activities. There was also some social events in between. We had some very good breakfast and lunches, a few video messages, and then obviously the field tour. So it was quite a diverse program that never really allowed anyone to get bored. There were some practical demonstrations with earthworm farms and some recycling materials, and then a lot of question and answer and discussion before we then packed our bags and went to another field tour. This is just this overall summary of all those events, and then at the very end we also had a bit of time to go and enjoy the nature that we found ourselves in and go on a bit of a game drive before we had our last few lectures and group sessions before we wrapped up the event. Apologies for the sound not coming through, but I hope that gave you a bit of an overview of the workshop. Just a big thank you to all the various people who made this possible: G20 GLI, UNU-FLORES, the speakers, all the volunteers that helped with the arrangements during the event, and then obviously the mines that allowed us onto their sites, and Chikwalo who hosted us. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Conrad. And also many thanks for making this workshop possible, as without LaRSSA, this could never have happened in South Africa. 1,000 thanks. And now over to Ms. Tumela Morapi, who will share her impressions. Tumela, over to you.
Afternoon, everybody. Just sharing. Please let me know if you can see my screen.
Not in the full screen mode yet.
Oh.
Yes, now we see.
Okay. Morning, everybody. I am Dumela from SLR Consulting. I'm a mine closure specialist. I was one of the participants who was lucky enough to join this workshop. So there was a lot of information that was shared during the session from our expert lecturers as well as from our industry leaders. I just highlighted the interactive sessions and the coal mining site visits in my presentation. So I really enjoyed the interactive sessions. As you've seen from Alexi's screen, there was about 10 sessions, and after each session, we had a bit of a discussion as well as an assignment that we each got to do. And most of the assignments included like us as participants having to solve a similar problem or having various problems that we needed to address that were ranged from having to design a post-mining land use plan for an open pit mine or having to decide if we're going to consider grazing or housing development in our post-mining. And during these sessions, I just highlighted some of the moments that were particularly stood out for me was that aside from the original introductions that we had made, we were able to learn about the various participants' backgrounds, and we had participants from various mining departments as well as environmental departments from different countries. And we had academia and obviously from the private sector as well, like myself. And then it was also a reminder of how even in even in a space where you have people with the same professional background, you can always expect that they would have different ideas or options when you are faced with the same problem. And then the engagements also highlighted how important it is to always consult your interested and affected parties whenever you're designing a remediation or restoration or rehabilitation plan, because it's really important to consider what they're using the land for versus what you are using or planning on using the land for. And also during the geospatial monitoring sessions, we were able to explore different options of monitoring tools and data interpretation, and as well as be able to kind of be supplement all the data that you may need when you're doing your monitoring in areas where you have little to no data that was available. And then during the
Tumela, we still see the first slide.
I am moving between slides on my side, so I'm not sure why it's not moving. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay. And then during the coal mine site visits, I really was intrigued and also excited to finally see a modular reverse osmosis in person, because I've read so much about it during our mine plans, and also how the area, or rather the mine, has been implementing various water management measures to deal with their acid mine drainage, as well as dealing with having a lot of decant on their mine facilities as well. And the other second thing that I wanted to highlight from the site visit was getting to explore the area where they were using rock mulch as their growth medium. Obviously, they've added a bit of chemical adjustment to the soil to also enhance the growth media, but it was really great to see how they had at least 4 different grass species that were able to grow on the land, and they had good crown cover as well as minimal to no soil erosion. I think these are the two things that I am still interested in learning as I progress with my career, which are basically long-term water management and using nature-based solutions such as the constructed wetlands that they had, or phytoremediation, and obviously some key technological systems, as well as reclaiming old waste facilities that we have in the country or in any other country that they also have some waste facilities that they need to move from one end to the other one. Yeah. And thank you.
Thanks a lot, dear Tumelo. That's been really good to hear from you. Thank you very much. And please stay with us till the end of this webinar, as potentially some questions may be addressed to you. Once again, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And now it is my pleasure to invite the next participant to share her impressions. Dear Mia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Alexi. Oh, come on.
Dear Tumelo, could you please stop sharing your screen?
Stop sharing.
I don't have the option to stop sharing on my side, Alexi.
I see. Dear elders, could you please help us with?
No.
Okay, while we figure that out, I will just introduce myself. My name is Mia. Am I now able to share?
It seems so. Yes.
Mia, please share.
Let's try that. Is that going through? No, it's still not giving me that option to share the window. It's still not giving me the option to.
Alexi, do you have the slides? Can you share for
Alexi,
her?
can you please share it from your side?
Yes, Mia, I can share your slides from my computer.
Thank you
Just
very
easy.
much.
I'll do so. It seems that I'm sharing now.
Okay, thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. Pardon that. I'm Mia. I'm an environmental specialist for B2Gold Namibia, and it was a huge honor to participate in the workshop that was recently held in South Africa. It was quite an opportunity coming from the mining sector, and being able to participate was a huge learning experience, and it provided an opportunity for a lot of exchange in terms of ideas on what we are doing and what others are doing, especially with regards to the site visits that we went to Tungela and DRD Gold. Alexi, can I control it from my side? Thank you. Okay, so what stood out, okay, we can go to the next one. So what stood out for me for the workshop, I summed it up in a couple of slides, was most importantly the sustainability of the restoration agenda. That's just sort of my summary of it. In the sense that when we look at restoration or rehabilitation, it needs to be sustainable. So the presentations, the workshops, the visits, and all the discussions that happened were able to highlight the three aspects of sustainability, considering the environmental aspects. Next one slide, Alexi. So looking at the environmental aspect, I think Alexi touched on the resource nexus. So that was a key lesson in that you have to consider the resources that you have and what it is that you are working towards restoring, reducing the risks and dangers once you've gone to the post-mining stage, and then in the end, the post-mining land use stage. So developing that rehab and restoration initiatives that focus on that resource nexus is important. Then the economic aspect, one of the presentations that stood out for me, I think, was from Professor Trutter, where he spoke about developing the ability to generate and mobilize funds for rehabilitation and restoration. We often speak about restoration, but it's important to educate communities and the people around us to say, funding is required, but there are opportunities out there. So the picture on the right just shows a few of the examples that Professor Trotter shared with us in terms of looking at government grants, private sector and corporate investments, and international organizations, NGOs, and development banks that can potentially support funding for initiatives that are geared towards rehabilitation and restoration. Then it's also important to ensure that you incorporate rehabilitation costs in your operational costs so that you do not wait to get to the end of mine closure before you start having to pay for the rehabilitation costs, because at the end it becomes more expensive. Then the social aspect highlighted on creating rehabilitation that restores land to a stage that can be utilized by communities and other post-mining land use inhabitants. So the picture on the side just shows one of the activities that we completed, which just shows ideas that put the human aspect at the center of rehabilitation and restoration, that it's not an isolated case where you leave people out of the process, but it's important to ensure that people are included in the process from the development of the project up to post-mine closure. We can move to the next one. Alexi, we can move. Okay, then another thing that stood out for me was the importance of legislation and setting objectives for post-mine closure. Because one of the things that we have operating from Namibia is that we do have legislation that are in development stages and a few that have been passed, but the workshop just highlighted the importance of having legislation that serve as guiding principles and that allow for regulation of activities, because a lot of operations work on a self-regulatory basis where they do what is best for them, but there's no sort of collective approach from a national perspective that says this is what is required and this is what the regulators are looking for when they come to regulate mine rehabilitation or mine closure. Then the importance of objectives is that objectives serve as targets for what is possible and what is aimed for. So once an organization gears towards restoration, they need to set objectives that guide their activities and the processes towards what they can achieve. And then lastly, the incorporation of standards is important. I think Mlu will speak on this. So that was one of the topics that also stood up for me, to say standard-based rehabilitation is important, and rehabilitation that is site-specific and based on research-based goals is key, because we cannot just for lack of a better word, we cannot thumbsuck goals and just put them into places. We cannot, for example, use goals that are set in Mongolia and use those to set standards for rehabilitation in South Africa, for example. So the goals and the objectives need to be very site-specific, but in line with standards and national legislation. Next one. Alexia, we can proceed to the next one. Okay, so at the end of it all, this was, in my opinion, not like any other ordinary workshop. So at the end of it all, we can ask ourselves, so what? So for me, the so what question was important. And I think the pictures that are the collage just highlights what stood out for me in that one of the things we were told when we started the workshop was, where is LaRSSA going? So there was a call to say, expand your boundaries, make new friends, grow deeper roots, be the best you can be, and have some fun along the way. And I think for most of the participants, that really happened. We had hands-on activities. We played with a bit of soil. We visited sites and saw what others were doing, did a lot of group work in developing land use plans. We even had our own mock conference of parties at the workshop. So those were, for me, some of the things that really stood out and some of the lessons that I was able to take and bring back into my workplace. And just as a note, Alexi, we've already started implementing some research projects on rehabilitation of tailings using biochar. So those were some of the things that stood up from the workshop for me. And on that note, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Mia. It's really encouraging to hear that you are already applying biochar to rehabilitate the tailings storage facility. And sorry for the delays that happened between the moment you said and the slides changed. That's not because of me
No
not listening to
problem.
you, but just because of the time lag between the moment when I click and when the computer reacts. So
Not a
thanks a
problem.
lot for sharing these insights. It was really great to have you, Tumela, and all other participants with us during that week. Thank you again, and please also stay with us till the end of the webinar for some questions might be addressed to you. And now I would like to invite Dr. Mlungeren Sikane, or just Mlu, who will share his knowledge and passion about biodiversity. Mlu, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alexi. And thank you very much, everybody, for coming through. So I was one of the lecturers at the course. And as Alexi has mentioned, I particularly focused on biodiversity. This is my passion. This is what I do every day. I eat, I breathe this. And it really gives me a lot of joy to actually share some of the insights from this workshop with you. So my specific topic was management of biodiversity in post-mining areas. And I also spoke a little bit about insights from COP16. So I just want to go through a few things that we talked about and some of the highlights that come out. And particularly the one thing, as Mia actually mentioned earlier, one thing that stood out was for us to talk about standards-based ecosystem restoration, with the context that ecosystem restoration is an umbrella term for all the different R's, as Conrad mentioned earlier, but particularly all the rehabilitation, all the restoration, remediation, reclamation, all are part of that particular branch. And we at the Society for Ecological Restoration have spent a lot of time, a lot of
Excuse
different
me,
authors.
Mlu, you are not in the full screen mode yet.
Am I not in the full screen mode? Okay.
Not
On
yet.
my side, it says I am. Let me give it a go again. Hopefully this is now on full screen mode, Alexi.
Not yet.
Because on my side, it says it is, eh? Okay. Is it okay if I go through it just, for time purpose? I hope it's not too much of a distraction, because on my side, it says I'm on full screen, but
Your screen is not shared.
At all.
You are not
Okay.
sharing now.
Let me try again. Let me try again. I've tried again. Hopefully that solves the problem.
Still not in the screen mode, full screen mode, but that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So we spent some time talking about the international standards, international principles and standards for the ecological restoration and recovery of mine sites. This is a good piece of work that is applicable for everybody throughout the world. Yes, the specifics in terms of sites might be different, but the principles are the same. So this is what really helps you to recover biodiversity at the end of the day. Some of the principles here are very useful for it. We spent some time highlighting the different threats that affect biodiversity, and we've got the big five. Here in Africa, we're very familiar with the big five, particularly extractive uses where mining falls under. We've got biological invasions, we've got habitat loss and fragmentation, we've got pollutants, we've got climate change. These are the big five drivers of change, and of course, these big drivers of change make ecosystem restoration a need, a priority for all of us throughout the continent, throughout the world. These are the issues that we have to tackle. And particularly when you zoom in on mining, of course, we've got all the different impacts that we are very familiar with. All these impacts start from, as far as exploration and construction, all the way throughout the life cycle of a mine. But biodiversity is one of those things that are very much impacted by mining. We may try in many instances to apply the mitigation hierarchy. We may try to avoid, we may try to minimize, we may try to rectify or compensate. These are all the different interventions that we have to apply, but at the end of the day, we need to deal with biodiversity and we need to manage it, particularly after we are done with mining. So as part of the standards that we spoke about earlier, or at least I introduced in the first slide, we spent some time going through the definitions because there is a big section on the standards dedicated to definitions, just to clarify, because people understand different things differently and people use different words differently. It helps to try and have a base that is common to all of us. So we did spend some time doing that. And after that, we focused on what we call the restorative continuum. This is to position where all those different R's fit in and how they actually
Mlu, we still see the second slide.
Still see the second slide. Okay. Let's do this. Apologies for that. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Let me stop sharing. Okay. And let me share perhaps the PDF version rather than the. Let me share the PDF version with you. Maybe that solves this particular problem. Yeah. Let's do that. Let me do that just to make sure. Okay. Now I'm trying the PDF version and I hope that solves this problem.
Yes, we see it now.
Okay. So we were here. The restorative continuum. So this is where all the different R's and how they fit in. And we spent enough time actually also highlighting the global commitment. And the one global commitment that we focused on, because it is a direct product of the last convention on biological diversity, COP16, was the Global Biodiversity Framework. It came recently. It's got 23 targets. And one of these 23 targets, target 2, talks about restoring 30% of all degraded ecosystems. Now, the restoration target is qualified by a sentence that says we want to make sure that by 2030 all ecosystems are under effective restoration, or at least 30% of all the areas that are degraded are under effective restoration. Now, when you read the toolkit for this particular target, it therefore then says, listen, what effective restoration means is standards-based restoration that is underpinned by agreed principles that result in appropriately balanced sustainable net gain that benefits and enhances biodiversity, ecosystem integrity, and human well-being. So the issue of standards is being reflected at a global level, at a global commitment level as well. Hence why we are having this conversation right now. So standards have got very different benefits, multiple benefits, but the one benefit I can touch on is that they really do improve the quality of our restoration efforts and the outcomes that we get. They help us to have that common foundation that despite the differences in site-specific factors, we all understand what we need to do in the bigger scheme of things. So the principles themselves of the standards were a key part of the lecture, 8 of them. From that, we need to engage stakeholders, we need to draw on many types of knowledge, we need to be informed by reference ecosystems, we need to support ecosystem discovery processes, we need to have clear goals and objectives and use measurable indicators. We want to seek the highest level of recovery attainable. We want to gain cumulative values when applied at large scales. And also, lastly, We want to make sure that all of our efforts are part of a continuum of restorative activities. Now, all these principles have got different explanations on what they mean and how you can integrate them. But we want to make sure that all of our restoration efforts have this. We then finished by also indicating the different decision trees that you can use when implementing such standards-based restoration. And we emphasize the need for us to actually monitor throughout all of our activities, and we can use what the Society for Ecological Restoration has developed, which is the recovery wheel. It uses a 5-star system, and it has got different attributes of the ecosystem, both social and ecological, that one could apply. And we finished the lecture by showing some nice pictures, different case studies on different types of restoration that have been done in South Africa, India, Australia, Sweden, the United States, and eventually we were done with our lecture. And one of the things I would like to conclude on, which was quite interesting for me and a lot of the different participants, was that we got people, one of the exercises, to actually think as different stakeholder groups within the room, like the mining company, government, local community, and everybody would sort of walk from one end of the room thinking about different policy initiatives that they would like to drive from their perspective. It was quite an engaging exercise, and quite a lot of people actually enjoyed it. So thank you very much. And Alexi, I hope that at least this part, when I used the PDF version, worked very well rather than the PowerPoint. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mlu. And indeed, it was great to have you with us during the workshop and today. When we met in South Africa in March, you were deeply involved in all our activities together with other participants. It was real fun to see how you, the expert in biodiversity, tried imagining yourself being a developer and advocating for the building and construction sector rather than conservation. So thank you for joining us, and please also stay till the end of the webinar.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Professor Dr. Tobias Rudolph from Georg Agricola University of Applied Sciences. Over to you, Tobias. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Alexei. Let me quickly test my presentation. Alexei, can you confirm that you see it?
Yes, we see it now in the full screen mode.
And you see the change?
Yes, we do.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be with you here. And I have to say thank you, Alexei, and also the other organizers for that great workshop in South Africa. I really enjoyed being there and having a wonderful exchange with the attendees. And even for me, it was a great learning curve. And I really took something home for me. I'm a professor for geomonitoring, geospatial monitoring at the Technical University, Technical Hochschule Georg Agricola, back in Bochum, the center of former coal mining in Germany. And I'm involved in a research center of post-mining. So we do research applied sciences around post-mining issues. And we combine it with an integrated team in 4 topics, looking at water, mine water. The geomonitoring part is mine, and then we also look into what you can do with the facilities of former mine sites for industrial heritage, and surely the 4th and very important part of land use and transition. We do that more than a decade now. It was an idea when the hardcore mining was close to enclosure. And with that time, we set also up a master program on geoengineering and post-mining. So if you like what we are doing, please join us back in Bochum, and we can show what we do. I was invited to give an overview on geospatial monitoring and also environmental monitoring. And the reason why I'm really into this is that Germany is also a mining country. All over the place, mines were existing, different types of raw materials, and the footprint we have nowadays is also quite huge. And there's really a need to get involved into these remnants and sort out the kind of restoration or reclamation, restoration, and rehabilitation process. Why is that so of importance or interest for us as scientists, applied scientists? We see a change in the perception of mining from a very simple early phase finding collection to quite a complicated process of doing mining and looking at the different, let me say, factors influencing the mining process. And if you carefully look into this, you need to be able to kind of monitor in different aspects, monitor your mining process. And you need to be in the position of looking at external factors. And this is particularly interested for the influence of the climate change. And surely, in a way of digitization and digitalization, that can be also done in a kind of spatial digital twin that you really have the entire process at your hand in your computer. I was going to show in that lecture on one afternoon the possibilities of geo-environmental monitoring. I used the 2 field trips on the sites where we were going to, in a way, in a preparation of what we saw the day after. And we looked at the Charlton remining tailings of DRD gold and Ponongela coal fields in the east of Johannesburg. I will only show now an example of the DRD gold facilities. And what I've demonstrated here was, and I'm a scientist and I normally have no money, no budget for special, let me say, data purchases and so on. So I showed an approach on how to use open data. And I was really into the utilization of the American Landsat data and the European Sentinel data, these remote sensing satellites, and they are available for quite some time. The Landsat data is longer available than I'm old. And I used also then additional data down to even Google data to look at these sites. And what I found quite interesting, because I was preparing that exercise from back home in Bochum, is even with 13,000 kilometers away, I can develop monitoring programs for mine sites all over the world, and particularly here, the DRD sites in South Africa. And I can get quite an insight from far away in how the area is developing, how the system is behaving. And if you look at here, the optical imagery as the top, it's very high resolution data. And we talk here about open, non-commercial open data available for all of us. Even on a mobile phone, it's available. And you can look and watch what's happening. And if you dive deeper in the lower left, you can go even down, let me say, like an hiker on the street, and you watch what the system or the mine site is doing by, for example, deploying Google Earth images. So you are really able to monitor what the mining companies are doing and what the process of mining or rehabilitation means, and if the story they tell is true. And if you then deploy even further information, some specialist information, I put here 3 examples in that slide, is on geology, soil humidity, and aerosols. You can tweak the satellite data and even use different types of satellite data integrated, and you get even further information on the surface and the surface properties. And the last one is the aerosol. So you can see whether the dust is blown away and where it's going, and so on. And you can do this not only with one single time snapshot here, as I've shown you here, but you can do that also along a timeline. So you can build really a comprehensive story of a particular mine site. And this is where geomonitoring comes in. You can monitor these sites, and if you deploy even further data from UAV drones, surface sensors, and so on, you can build even a broader picture. And this is what I try to convey during that workshop, that geo-environmental monitoring, geospatial monitoring is really key to an spatial temporal process and understanding. I have to say, you need to like thinking in 3D or even in 4D. But if you like that, you can really come to a sustainable land management. Remote sensing geospatial monitoring is definitely something which is transdisciplinary, because it's always a question on how to interpret what you see, and you need to have a little bit of confidence and experience in that. But if you do that, you are able to build a new story, and I called it here land improvement positivity as a term related to the land degradation neutrality. So geospatial monitoring is a key tool, and it goes even one further, because as I used Open Geodata, everybody can use Open Geodata, and this is one key step to public participation, really to community involvement. And I think because suddenly things get transparent, this is really sustainable innovation, and it's giving you opportunities. So I really enjoyed the workshop. The impressions from the field trips were great. And Alexei, thanks that I could participate.
Thank you very much from our side, dear Tobias. And thank you for being with us in South Africa. And thank you for your presentation today and for summarizing the content of your lecture that you delivered during the workshop. We already have one question from Izu Egbu from Nigeria, who's asking, what is the spatial resolution of Landsat and Sentinel satellite images?
Yeah, it depends a little bit on the type of Landsat or Sentinel you are using. The data I used here was around pixel 20 meters, 15, 20 meters, which is okay for an open system. You can push that with commercial systems down to a meter. Yeah, so it has advantages and disadvantages, but the commercial systems have around 15, 20 meters pixel size, the modern ones.
Thank you. Thank you for answering this question. One more from Mary from Ghana. Mary asks, apparently you again, within what time frame interval should the monitoring be done, yearly or 5 years?
It really depends on the challenge you are facing there, but I would recommend do this at least on a yearly basis. Establish yourself a workflow that you can update your system with new satellite imagery coming in, and then you should regularly look at it. With current systems, you can apply also change detection methods, so the computer is doing for you the interpretation, let me say, and is giving you a message if something is different. So it's not like that you need to sit on a daily basis in front of the computer and interpret the images.
Thank you, Tobias. The next question is from Ravi Shankar from Canada. Let me shorten it. So the question is about our workshop and the coverage of regulatory framework. So I believe it's me to answer this one. So indeed, we touched base, but given the international nature of the event and the very diverse representation, we tried covering the broader view of how these frameworks are to operate without scaling to the national levels, as let's say the regulations applied in Mauritania wouldn't be relevant for our participants from Madagascar. So with that, we did not consider the specific settings and situations of the countries represented at the workshop, but we did talk about the overall approach to regulation. Thank you for the question. Then let me continue reading from the chat. The question from Ines, again, Tobias, I believe it is addressed to you because this is about the applied geospatial monitoring techniques. Tobias, I believe you can see that question in the chat, so I do not read it loud out.
Wow.
On before the last.
Yeah. So we applied in Germany, for example, we applied this system to do the success monitoring of rehabilitation sites. So because the data is available more or less on a weekly basis, so you can build up quite a comprehensive story on these sites. So you can really see changes which are related to seasoning. You can see changes related to rainfall, water, soil humidity, but you can see also the progress of your rehabilitation method. Spatial monitoring is really an enabler, and if you introduce even highest resolution data, for example, from drones, which go in a spatial resolution down to a couple of centimeters and still covering several hundreds of square meters of area, you can build a really serious story here. And you see individual leaves of trees, for example, and you can see how the vegetation is behaving. So it's really an enabler. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you for answering, Tobias. So could you please read the next one from Amos in the chat? And in the meanwhile, I'll answer the question of Sasa from South Sudan. So Sasa asks us about the major challenges that we are facing during carrying out mining activities. During our workshop, we discussed the set of challenges. Most of them were related to the unsustainable management of resources, including, for example, mine water drainage, soil compaction due to the stockpiling, biodiversity decline, air pollution and deterioration of air quality, and in general, social instability during the closure process of the mining sites that we considered. I hope this answers your question. And now, Tobias, could you please answer the one from Amos?
Absolutely. So what he's asking is on whether I can monitor underground mines. Surely I can do that. I've shown you here in that example the optical and multispectral version. There's still another system around us, which is radar based. And with that, you can really detect ground movement, uplift, as well as subsidence. And we are here talking about millimeter scale of changes on a vertical axis. So from large scale underground mining down to artisanal mining, you can monitor what's happening in the subsurface and how the surface is behaving.
Thank you, Tobias. And let us now take the final question. This is from Estefanos from Belgium. And I believe, Mlu, this one can be addressed to you. And Estefanos asks about performing effectiveness assessment before implementing nature-based solutions, for example, wetlands. For wetlands.
Thank you, Alexi. To answer, let's talk about it in the ideal sort of space. And yes, the standards do touch on this, because ideally we should test things out before we fully implement them. So if it is an issue...
We cannot hear you, Mlu. It seems that we have lost connection with Mlungeli. So let me thank all of you for joining us today. Thank you for your interest and for your time. Dear panelists, dear webinar attendees, thanks for being with us for this hour. Thank you for the questions. Few of them remain unanswered in the chat, so please contact our presenters bilaterally. They provided their contact information in their presentations. And stay tuned for the updates from the G20 Global Land Initiatives and the partners, LaRSSA and UNU-FLORES. Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.